When you think of R&B music, you picture smooth vocals, passionate performances, and careers that span decades. But some of the genre's biggest names managed to destroy everything they built in mere moments. These weren't gradual declines caused by changing musical tastes or industry shifts. These were sudden, explosive incidents that transformed superstars into cautionary tales almost overnight. From violent confrontations to shocking revelations, these artists learned the hard way that fame can disappear faster than it arrives. Here are 12 shocking stories about R&B stars who ruined their careers in seconds. The King's three-decade fall. Robert Sylvester Kelly dominated R&B for nearly 3 decades, earning the nickname the King of R&B with hits like I Believe I Can Fly and Ignition Remix. He sold millions of albums, won 3 Grammys, and seemed untouchable at the height of his career. But whispers of misconduct had followed him since the 1990s, when allegations first surfaced about inappropriate relationships with underage girls. According to multiple sources, he allegedly married 15-year-old singer Aaliyah in 1994 using falsified documents. A leaked video in 2002 led to child pornography charges, but a controversial trial in 2008 ended with his acquittal on all counts. For years, the music industry continued supporting him despite mounting accusations. Radio stations played his songs, major artists collaborated with him, and fans packed his concerts. Then came 2019. The documentary Surviving R. Kelly brought victim stories directly to viewers, creating a tidal wave of public outrage that could no longer be ignored. Within days, his record label dropped him. Streaming services began removing his music from playlists. Former collaborators publicly distanced themselves from him. Federal and state prosecutors launched new investigations that led to multiple indictments. In 2021 and 2022, Kelly was convicted on charges including sex trafficking, racketeering, and sexual exploitation of a child. He received a combined 31-year prison sentence and is currently incarcerated at a federal facility in North Carolina. The man who once topped charts worldwide now spends his days behind bars, his legacy permanently destroyed by decades of alleged abuse that finally caught up with him. America's sweetheart turns public enemy. Chris Brown was 19 years old, and at the absolute peak of his career when everything came crashing down. He had just released his 3rd album, scored multiple hit singles, and was being compared to Michael Jackson for his dancing ability. On February 8, 2009, the night before the Grammy Awards, Brown and his girlfriend Rihanna were driving to a pre-Grammy party when an argument erupted. What happened next shocked the world. Brown repeatedly punched Rihanna in the face, bit her ear, and choked her until she nearly lost consciousness. She required hospitalization for her injuries. When a graphic photo of Rihanna's battered face leaked online days later, the image became one of the most widely circulated celebrity photos in history. Brown turned himself into police and was charged with felony assault. The backlash was immediate and severe. Radio stations pulled his music from rotation. Corporate sponsors, including Doublemint Gum, terminated their contracts. He withdrew from public appearances and was replaced at the Grammys. In his own words from a 2017 documentary, Brown said he went from being America's sweetheart with #1 songs to being public enemy #1 overnight. He pleaded guilty to felony assault in June 2009 and received 5 years probation, community service, and domestic violence counseling. During a Good Morning America interview in 2011, when the host brought up the assault, Brown became so enraged that he smashed a faux dressing room window with a chair after the segment ended. Over the following years, he faced multiple additional allegations of violence. However, unlike most careers destroyed by scandal, Brown somehow survived. He won a Grammy for Best R&B Album in 2012, continued releasing music, and maintained a dedicated fan base. His story demonstrates how the music industry's accountability for domestic violence remains inconsistent and often inadequate, especially compared to other entertainment sectors. The documented downfall. Bobby Brown's career trajectory reads like a tragedy in multiple acts. He rose to fame with New Edition in the 1980s before launching a wildly successful solo career with hits like My Prerogative and Every Little Step. At his peak, he had $55 million in the bank and was one of the biggest names in R&B. Then he married Whitney Houston in 1992, and both their lives began spiraling into addiction. While media reports long blamed Brown for introducing Houston to drugs, the truth proved far more complicated. According to Houston's close friend Robin Crawford, Whitney had first tried cocaine at age 14, years before meeting Brown. Multiple people close to the couple later revealed that Houston was actually the more experienced drug user. Brown himself claimed in his memoir that he didn't know Houston used cocaine until their wedding day, when he allegedly walked in on her snorting a line. Their marriage became synonymous with chaos. Brown faced a relentless string of arrests starting in the 1990s for offenses including driving under the influence, drug possession, battery, and failure to pay child support. In December 2003, he was charged with battery after allegedly striking Houston, with police reporting visible injuries to her face. According to sources, Brown was reportedly kidnapped by a street gang in 1993 over a $25,000 drug debt, and Houston paid a $400,000 ransom to secure his release. The incident was never reported to authorities. Brown's addiction to crack, heroin, and cocaine consumed both their lives. In 2000, after serving time in jail, he finally got clean from hard drugs, but Houston continued using. This created an impossible situation where they couldn't stay together because they were never sober at the same time. Their toxic reality show, Being Bobby Brown, in 2005, only accelerated Houston's image destruction. They divorced in 2007, with Houston receiving custody of their daughter. Brown walked away with nothing from his once massive fortune. While he has since gotten sober and rebuilt some semblance of a career, his story remains a cautionary tale about how addiction and toxic relationships can destroy even the most successful artists. The multiple accusers, Trey Songz built his career on being the smooth R&B heartthrob who sang about romance and intimacy. Behind the charming image, however, a disturbing pattern of allegations began emerging that would severely damage his reputation. Dylan Gonzalez, a former college basketball player, accused him of rape in December 2021 via social media. She later released a detailed statement describing the alleged assault at a Las Vegas hotel, writing that she was forced to repeatedly relive the horror and unbearable PTSD of the incident. In February 2022, another woman filed a $20 million lawsuit under the pseudonym Jane Doe, alleging Songz raped her at a house party in 2016. The lawsuit claimed they had a previous consensual relationship, but at this particular party, he allegedly became violent, threw her to the ground, and assaulted her despite her screams and pleas for him to stop. But the allegations didn't stop there. In April 2022, video footage surfaced showing Songz at a Foxwoods Resort casino event in August 2013, approaching a woman named Megan Johnson and yanking down her bikini top, exposing her breast to the crowd while chanting about it. Johnson demanded $5 million in damages, claiming the incident caused her severe emotional distress. Actress Keke Palmer also accused him of sexual intimidation after appearing in his music video without consent. She described feeling pressured by both Songs and his team to participate in situations that made her uncomfortable. Perhaps most notably, one of the Jane Doe lawsuits was refiled in 2023 for $25 million and named not just Songs but also his record label Atlantic Records, his manager Kevin Liles, and 300 Entertainment as defendants. Her attorney argued that these industry executives were responsible for enabling Songs' alleged behavior by turning a blind eye to the growing number of accusations over the years. This represented a new legal strategy of holding record labels accountable for their artists' misconduct. While Las Vegas police dropped one criminal investigation in April 2022, citing insufficient evidence and inconsistencies in witness testimony, the civil lawsuits continued piling up. One case was reportedly settled in April 2024 under undisclosed terms. Despite these multiple allegations from different women spanning nearly a decade, Songs has maintained his innocence and continues to release music. His legal team has consistently denied all accusations. However, the sheer volume and consistency of claims has undeniably tarnished his public image and raised serious questions about accountability in the R&B industry, the disease that wouldn't stay secret. Usher Raymond had spent 2 decades building a pristine reputation as one of R&B's biggest stars when a shocking story broke in July 2017. Multiple media outlets reported that in 2012, Usher had allegedly paid a $1.1 million settlement to a woman who claimed he transmitted herpes to her without disclosing his diagnosis. The news sent shockwaves through the entertainment world and sparked immediate legal action. Within weeks, attorney Lisa Bloom held a press conference in Manhattan representing 3 people who claimed Usher had exposed them to the virus without warning them of his condition. One plaintiff, 19-year-old Quantasia Sharpton, publicly came forward saying Usher had invited her to his hotel room after a concert, but never mentioned having any sexually transmitted infections. She said she never would have consented had she known and felt deeply violated when the news broke, especially since she had recently given birth and the virus could have serious implications for newborns. 2 other plaintiffs, identified only as Jane Doe and John Doe, filed anonymously, with at least one testing positive for herpes. Bloom emphasized that while having herpes shouldn't be stigmatized, deliberately exposing intimate partners without disclosure was both illegal and deeply unethical. She called on Usher to either publicly deny the reports or contact his partners since 2012 to notify them. The lawsuit sought damages for sexual battery, fraud, negligence, and infliction of emotional distress. Usher's legal team responded by denying every allegation and claiming the plaintiffs had assumed the risk by engaging in sexual contact. They also accused the 3 individuals of having unclean hands, suggesting the plaintiffs had committed some wrongdoing themselves. One woman, Laura Helm, filed a separate lawsuit initially demanding $10 million, which she later increased to $20 million, citing emotional harm and punitive damages. The legal battles dragged on for nearly 2 years, creating constant negative headlines. In May 2019, Helm's case was finally dismissed after both parties reportedly reached an amicable resolution. The dismissal was filed with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled in the future. Neither Usher nor his representatives ever issued a public statement about the matter. While the scandal didn't completely destroy Usher's career like it might have for a lesser artist, it created a permanent stain on his reputation. Some fans defended him, while others felt betrayed. The controversy also contributed to the breakdown of his marriage to Grace Miguel, with the couple separating in 2018 after 2 years of marriage. They cited the decision as mutual, but the timing suggested the scandal had taken its toll. The entanglement that became a spectacle. August Alsina was a rising R&B star with hit songs like No Love when he became romantically involved with Jada Pinkett Smith. The relationship, which allegedly began in 2015 after Jaden Smith introduced them, would eventually dominate headlines and effectively derail Alsina's promising career. And according to Alsina, he met the Smith family when Jada took an interest in helping him battle a serious autoimmune liver disease. What started as friendship and emotional support transformed into something deeper. Alsina, who was 22 at the time while Jada was 43, later described giving himself completely to the relationship in a way he'd never experienced before. He claimed Will Smith had given him permission to pursue a relationship with Jada, believing they were in an open marriage. For years, rumors swirled, but nothing was confirmed. Then, in June 2020, Alsina gave an emotional interview to Angela Yee, where he openly discussed his relationship with Jada. He spoke about how deeply he loved her and how walking away from the relationship nearly destroyed him, saying it pushed him into becoming a different person and broke him down completely. The revelation created an instant media firestorm. A month later, Jada appeared on her show Red Table Talk with Will Smith present to address the allegations. She confirmed she'd had a relationship with Alsina during a period when she and Will were separated, though she corrected Will's suggestion that he'd given permission, emphasizing that only she could give herself permission. She famously described it as an entanglement, a term that immediately went viral and became a cultural punchline. Within days, Alsina released a song titled Entanglements with Rick Ross that seemed to directly address the situation with lyrics about breaking someone's heart. The public spectacle appeared to have serious consequences for Alsina's career. His presence in the music industry noticeably shrank following the revelation. In 2020, he took to social media suggesting he was being forced out of music, posting cryptic messages about industry stonewalling and betrayal happening behind the scenes. He wrote about diabolical levels of manipulation and roadblocking that were keeping him from success. Alsina maintained that he'd only spoken publicly about the relationship because rumors were already circulating and affecting his business relationships and livelihood. He said he needed to protect his reputation and integrity, especially since he had 3 nieces to support after taking them in following their mother's death. However, many perceived his public revelation as a betrayal of the Smith family who had supported him during difficult times, and it appeared to have consequences. Whether Alsina was actually blackballed by the industry or simply faced the natural consequences of becoming known more for celebrity drama than his music remains debated. What's clear is that after being positioned as a rising star in R&B, his career momentum completely stalled following the entanglement controversy, and he struggled to regain relevance in an industry that seemed to shut him out. The violent spiral back to prison life. Jennings had one of the most compelling redemption stories in R&B history until he threw it all away in a single night of rage. Born Chester Jermaine Jennings in Toledo, Ohio, he'd served 10 years in prison, starting at age 14, for an arson that killed a woman. While incarcerated, he transformed himself through music, learning guitar and fine-tuning his voice. Upon his release in 2002, he moved to New York and almost immediately found success. He won Amateur Night at the Apollo Theater 5 times, opened for Nelly at Radio City Music Hall, and released his debut album, Life 268-192, in 2004, with the numbers representing his prison identification. The album went platinum and established him as a socially conscious R&B artist with a distinctive, raspy voice and powerful storytelling ability. He released hit after hit and seemed to have truly turned his life around, becoming a symbol that convicted felons could rehabilitate and succeed. Then came October 19, 2008. Jennings got into an argument with his ex-girlfriend, Joy Pound of Obuamum, the mother of his children. According to police reports, he drove to a house in Smyrna, Georgia, where he believed she was staying with a new boyfriend. In a fit of rage, he kicked down the door and fired gunshots into the air outside the residence. When police arrived, Jennings fled the scene, leading them on a high-speed chase through Smyrna that ended when he crashed his red 2005 Corvette. When officers apprehended him, he refused to take a sobriety test. He was charged with multiple offenses, including possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, which alone carried serious weight given his previous felony conviction. He also faced charges for discharging a firearm near a public highway, fleeing and attempting to elude police, driving under the influence, and criminal trespass. The legal process dragged on for nearly 2 years while Jennings continued his music career, releasing his fourth album, I Still Believe, in August 2010. But on September 22, 2010, a Georgia judge sentenced him to 3.5 years in prison. Before the sentencing, Jennings was reportedly contrite in court, saying he'd committed the crimes and deserved punishment. That same day, he took to Twitter to bid farewell to his fans in a lengthy, emotional message. He thanked everyone who had given him a chance and said he'd had a fabulous career. He wrote about living 100 lives in just 6 years and not having the right to complain because God gives and takes away in measure. He signed off by encouraging everyone to smile because it's contagious. Producer Jermaine Dupri tweeted that they'd given life 3 years. In interviews before sentencing, Jennings had hinted that his next album would be his last, suggesting he may have known prison was inevitable. The tragedy of Life Jennings is that he genuinely seemed to have changed his life through music and positive messages. He'd overcome tremendous obstacles to achieve success and become a role model for others trying to leave troubled pasts behind. One violent outburst destroyed everything he'd built over 6 years and sent him right back to the place he'd worked so hard to escape. His story serves as a reminder that rehabilitation is possible, but maintaining that transformation requires constant vigilance and self-control. The prescription that became an addiction. Sometimes careers aren't destroyed by a single shocking moment, but by a slow, documented decline that plays out in real time. This was the case for Bobby Brown, though his story deserves examination beyond the headlines. After leaving New Edition at the height of their success, Brown's solo career exploded with his 1988 album Don't Be Cruel, which sold over 12 million copies worldwide. His bad boy image and innovative New Jack Swing sound made him a superstar. He seemed to have everything when he married Whitney Houston in 1992. Their wedding was lavish, and the couple appeared unstoppable, combining their star power into what should have been a musical dynasty. Instead, their relationship became a case study in how addiction can destroy two incredibly talented people. The public largely blamed Brown for Houston's struggles, but this narrative was inaccurate. According to Houston's longtime friend Robin Crawford's memoir, Whitney had first tried cocaine at 14, nearly 2 decades before meeting Brown. Houston's brother Michael later admitted to giving his sister drugs in her late teens, saying it was acceptable in the 80s and not considered a bad thing at the time. Even on their wedding day, Brown claimed he was shocked to walk in on Houston snorting cocaine, not realizing she was already a user. Their addictions fed off each other in destructive ways. According to Brown, Houston was actually more experienced with drugs when they got together. They both admitted using cocaine, with Houston telling Oprah that Brown had laced their marijuanas with rock cocaine. But beyond cocaine, Brown admitted to smoking heroin and crack, the latter of which he would mix with marijuana. He described reaching rock bottom during their marriage, with both of them losing their minds to addiction. In 2000, after serving time in jail, Brown got clean from hard drugs. When Houston picked him up from jail with drugs in the car, he declined them for the first time. This became a turning point, but instead of bringing them together, It drove them apart because Houston continued using while Brown was trying to maintain sobriety. Though he stopped hard drugs, he developed a severe alcohol addiction that lasted years. Their relationship grew increasingly tumultuous. In December 2003, Brown was arrested for battery after allegedly striking Houston, leaving visible injuries on her face. Throughout the 2000s, Brown faced an almost constant stream of arrests for various offenses, including multiple DUI charges, drug possession, and failure to pay child support. In 2004, he was sentenced to 90 days in jail for owing $63,000 in back child support to his ex, Kim Ward. Houston paid the debt after he spent one night in jail. Their toxic dynamic was broadcast to millions through their disastrous reality show Being Bobby Brown in 2005, which showed a side of Houston that shattered her pristine image forever. Houston filed for separation in 2006, and their divorce was finalized the following year. Brown walked away from the marriage with nothing. The man who'd entered the relationship with $55 million in the bank had lost everything to addiction and legal troubles. When Houston died in 2012, Brown struggled to perform at a New Edition show the day after her death, breaking down in tears on stage. 3 years later, their daughter Bobby Christina was found unconscious in a bathtub under eerily similar circumstances to her mother's death. She spent months in a coma before dying at age 22. Then, in 2020, Brown's son Bobby Jr. died of an overdose involving alcohol, cocaine, and fentanyl. Today, Brown has been sober from drugs for over 2 decades and from alcohol for several years. He's managed a modest career resurgence, but his story demonstrates how addiction doesn't destroy careers in a single moment. Instead, it's death by 1,000 cuts, each arrest and scandal chipping away at credibility until nothing remains of the once unstoppable superstar. When reality TV destroyed reality, the 2000s introduced a dangerous new element to celebrity culture with reality television, and few artists suffered its consequences more than Bobby Brown. His 1988 solo career success with Don't Be Cruel had made him a household name with hits like My Prerogative and Every Little Step. He'd survived the rocky transition from New Edition to solo stardom and established himself as a force in R&B and New Jack Swing. Then, in 2005, at a point when both he and wife Whitney Houston were struggling with serious addiction issues, they agreed to star in the reality show Being Bobby Brown on Bravo. The show was supposed to rehabilitate Brown's bad boy image and show audiences the real man behind the headlines. Instead, it became one of the most infamous celebrity reality shows ever produced and accelerated both their career destructions. The program showed their dysfunctional marriage in excruciating detail, with cameras capturing behavior that ranged from bizarre to deeply disturbing. Houston's participation particularly shocked viewers who had known her as the pristine pop princess with an angelic voice. Seeing her disheveled, enabling Brown's behavior, and speaking incoherently shattered the illusion forever. One particularly notorious episode featured Brown graphically discussing having to manually help Houston with a constipation issue. The oversharing was so extreme that it became water-cooler conversation, but not in the way that rehabilitates images. Critics savaged the show. The New York Times called it a picture of such dysfunction it feels intrusive to look at it. Entertainment Weekly graded it an F and called it truly the most disgusting and execrable series ever to ooze its way onto television. Yet despite the universal critical hatred, people watched in massive numbers, drawn to the train wreck spectacle. The show did exactly the opposite of what was intended. Instead of humanizing Brown and making audiences sympathetic to him, It reinforced every negative stereotype about him being a bad influence on Houston. It gave viewers a front-row seat to their addiction and dysfunction, with many episodes clearly showing behavior consistent with substance abuse. Houston appeared so different from her public persona that fans were heartbroken watching her decline in real time. After one season, consisting of 11 episodes, Bravo mercifully canceled the show. But the damage was permanent and irreversible. The footage existed forever as documentation of how far both had fallen. Houston would later cite the show as one of her biggest regrets. She filed for divorce from Brown in September 2006, less than 18 months after the show aired, and their divorce was finalized in April 2007. While multiple factors contributed to their split, the reality show had put their worst moments on permanent display and likely accelerated the marriage's end. For Brown, being Bobby Brown stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of reality television. The medium that promised to save his reputation instead provided documented evidence of his lowest points. It showed millions of viewers the chaos of his personal life and confirmed their worst suspicions about his influence on Houston. The show didn't just fail to rehabilitate his image, it became Exhibit A in The Case Against Him, forever archived and available for anyone who wants to understand how far the king of stage had fallen from his throne. It proved that sometimes the worst career move is letting cameras document your real life when your real life is falling apart, the collaboration that couldn't survive. Controversy. Mario Winans and P. Diddy dominated the R&B charts in 2004 with their hit I Don't Wanna Know, which sampled the Fugees' Ready or Not, and became one of the year's biggest songs. Winans came from R&B royalty as a member of the famous Winans gospel music family and had established himself as a talented producer and artist in his own right. The success seemed to position him for a long, prosperous career under Bad Boy Records. Then the music industry began changing in ways that created unexpected challenges. While Winans never faced a single catastrophic scandal, the industry's relationship with Bad Boy Records became increasingly complicated in the 2000s. Sean Diddy Combs' label, once the dominant force in hip-hop and R&B, faced mounting criticism over artist contracts, royalty disputes, and Diddy's own controversial behavior. Numerous artists who had been signed to Bad Boy came forward over the years with complaints about not being paid fairly, being shelved and unable to release music, or having their careers mismanaged. The label's reputation shifted from hitmaker to potential career killer. Winans found himself caught in this environment. After his 1997 debut and 2004 breakthrough, his output slowed dramatically. He released Hurt No More in 2008, but it failed to recapture his earlier success. The album received little promotion and seemed to disappear almost immediately after release. In interviews, Winans appeared frustrated with the music industry and his inability to release music on his own terms while under contract. While he continued producing for other artists, his own artist career essentially stalled out. Unlike many artists on this list, Winans didn't destroy his career through criminal behavior, scandal, or a single catastrophic decision. Instead, his story represents how the infrastructure around an artist, particularly record label dynamics and industry politics, can effectively end a career just as thoroughly as any personal failing. Being associated with a label that was increasingly seen as problematic, combined with the changing landscape of R&B in the 2000s, meant that even talented artists with hit records could find their momentum completely stopped. Winans' career serves as a reminder that sometimes the people and systems artists trust to guide their careers can inadvertently become the very things that destroy them. The crossroads of addiction and industry. August Alsina's story connects to a broader pattern in R&B where talented young artists find themselves overwhelmed by the combination of sudden fame, industry, pressures, and personal demons. Alsina was barely 23 when his debut album Testimony peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 in 2014. The album's success came despite incredible personal tragedy. His older brother Melvin had been shot and killed in 2010, and Alsina channeled his grief into music that resonated with audiences. His raw vulnerability and willingness to discuss struggles with addiction, particularly to Percocet following eye surgery, made him seem authentic in an era when authenticity was increasingly valued. But that vulnerability also revealed deep wounds. Alsina suffered from a serious autoimmune liver disease that caused him to collapse on stage multiple times. In 2014, he fell into a coma for 3 days. The illness was so severe that in 2019, he woke up one morning completely unable to feel his legs and required hospitalization. These health crises, combined with addiction issues and the grief of losing his brother, created a perfect storm of vulnerability. When he met the Smith family through Jaden Smith in 2015, they offered support and friendship during this difficult period. What developed between him, Puitt, and Jada Pinkett Smith would ultimately define his public image more than his music. After the entanglement became public in 2020, Alsina's career trajectory changed dramatically. Whether he was actually blackballed by the industry or simply became more known for celebrity gossip than his artistry, the effect was the same. His music releases became increasingly sporadic. His social media presence grew erratic with posts suggesting he felt shut out of opportunities and betrayed by industry figures. He pivoted away from music to launch a gender-neutral skincare line called Encina Wellness in 2022, suggesting he'd accepted that his music career had effectively ended. Alsina's story reflects how the R&B industry can chew up and spit out young artists who are dealing with trauma, illness, and personal struggles. Unlike established superstars who can survive scandals because of their proven track record, rising artists remain vulnerable. One major controversy can stop momentum before a career is fully established. Alsina went from being positioned as the next big thing in R&B to being remembered primarily as the other person in Jada Pinkett Smith's entanglement. The talent and potential that drove Testimony to the top of the charts got buried under celebrity gossip and drama, the system that enables destruction. Looking across these stories, a pattern emerges that extends beyond individual failures. The R&B industry has historically struggled with accountability in ways that enable destructive behavior until it reaches catastrophic levels. For decades, rumors and allegations surrounded R. Kelly, yet major labels, radio stations, and collaborators continued supporting him until documentary evidence made. Denying reality impossible. Multiple women accused Trey Songz of sexual misconduct across nearly a decade before civil lawsuits finally named record labels and management as complicit in enabling the behavior. Chris Brown faced minimal long-term career consequences for domestic violence that would have ended careers in other industries. This reflects deeper systemic issues within music business culture. Artists generate enormous revenue for labels, concert promoters, and streaming platforms, creating financial incentives to overlook behavior that should end careers. The industry historically protected male stars accused of misconduct, while female victims faced scrutiny and doubt. Legal settlements with non-disclosure agreements kept patterns of behavior hidden from public view. Management teams prioritized protecting investments over addressing serious allegations. The same industry that enabled these destructive patterns also failed to provide meaningful support systems. Young artists thrust into sudden fame often lack the emotional tools and support networks to handle pressure, wealth, and temptation. Addiction issues are common but rarely addressed until they've already destroyed careers. Mental health struggles go untreated. When artists do face consequences, the industry abandons them rather than attempting rehabilitation. The stories in this list aren't just about individual failings. They're about an industry structure that enables, ignores, and profits from destructive behavior until it can no longer be hidden. Real change requires examining not just the artists who crashed, but the system that put them on a collision course with destruction from the start. Until the R&B industry develops meaningful accountability measures, prevention programs, and support systems, these stories will continue repeating with different names but similar patterns. But similar patterns. But similar patterns. But similar patterns. But similar patterns.